All right, so Joe, good
Hey,
afternoon.
good afternoon.
Nice to see
Happy
Victoria.
Wednesday.
Yes, happy Wednesday. Nice to see Victoria here too. Thank you, Victoria,
Hi,
for joining us today.
thank
Others
you.
may join in the middle, but we'll see how that goes. But what we wanted to do right now is we wanted to talk about a topic that Joe and I had been discussing for a little while now, that has to do with, I'm going to share my screen, with this concept of being prepared, okay? Because here we are near the end of the year, and which is a wonderful thing, but we have to look forward, and not only do we have to look forward, but we have to be aware of what's going on in our environments and how the things that are happening locally, statewide, nationally, internationally, can have an impact on our business. So we wanted to talk about this concept of preparation. And I guess from the first
Well, Jay,
statement of it is that
did you know that be prepared is the Boy Scout motto?
it is, and my son's an Eagle Scout, so of
So
which I am very proud.
and you should be. That's a lot of work.
That was a
And
lot
I
of
was a
work.
scout, so I actually understand and embrace that be prepared aspect of things.
Yeah.
So thank you.
You're welcome. Well, the thing about preparation is that you look around and you see what's going on, and sometimes a storm might make landfall, but sometimes it doesn't. Okay. So if it doesn't, you go, oh, what do I have to do all the preparation for? I also look at it like living here in the San Francisco Bay Area, anytime my wife and I travel up to San Francisco, from the San Jose area, we make sure we take extra layers of clothing and hats and things like that because we want to be prepared because San Francisco can be substantially cooler than San Jose in any given day. And then depending upon what part of the city you're in. Okay. So
Or
preparation.
You go up to Lake Tahoe, you better be prepared. And because we've heard the stories of people getting stuck up in the snow, and so yes.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's see. When you see signs of an approaching storm, in this case, business type activities, it's time to prepare. And there are several things that Joe, you and I have talked about that are sort of signs right now of what's happening. And there are economic indicators, some of which are showing things like consumer interest rates are up and consumer delinquency rates are up. And this can kind of have an impact on whether or not, depending upon what business you're in, whether or not you're going to be seeing more, or should we say less interaction with the uh, the consumer-based clients. If you're in a business-to-business situation, that might be a little bit different. But then there is also situations that can occur and impact the business-to-business situations. There's a lot of geopolitical stuff going on, which could impact whether or not you're able to ship merchandise to a given part of the world and all sorts of things like that. And then there are these commercial real estate situations that are going on. There's been a number of um, projects that have halted, or facilities that they've gone into default, etc. So there are things that are going on, as well as this upward pressure on labor costs and things like that. So stuff is happening. So I wanted, maybe Joe, you could take a moment or two just to generally comment on these sorts of signs, and then we'll go into what you can do to prepare.
Well, it's rather interesting also that we have Victoria with us because her background before her fine chocolates was in the finance space. So it's really interesting that you're here to join us today,
Yeah.
as some of us, and if there's things that you're seeing that contribute to this, please jump in. Well, interest, especially in the commercial space, we're seeing a lot of defaults in the commercial space where the balloon payments are coming, interest rates go up, and they just can't make the numbers work. So a lot of pressure on the commercial and the business space right now on what's going to happen and how to do that. What does that mean as we're moving forward?
Yeah, and that's a good question about what does that mean? Because some people will look at this sort of stuff and say, oh, golly geez, that's mean that there will be a recession? No, It does not mean that there will be a recession necessarily. They've been predicting a recession now for months, and the economy has actually grown and done well. But does that mean that there will not be one? No, it doesn't mean that either. Okay, these are just signs and indicators. So this concept of preparation gets us to the idea of recognizing what's going on in the environment and taking action so that you are able to pivot in the direction that's as necessary, whether things are, take a turn to the left or take a turn to the right. Would you say that's reasonable, Joe?
Absolutely. It's being prepared. It's like, okay, if this happens, we've got something in place. We've got this happening, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we dive into contingency planning and some other things we might recommend. And Victoria, don't hesitate to jump in if you see something, you hear something, or you want to say something, because with your background, more you're an expert in some of these spaces, right?
Sure. Thank you, Joe.
All right. So what should you do to be prepared? And these are some things that, from a brainshare perspective, that we know are accessible and available for to take some action on, that are part of our offering, on brainshare.us. The first thing is clean.
And we've been through this before.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
I
true.
personally have been through this in the 2008, 9, 10 recession, the 2000 or the 2001 dot-com bust. So this is part of the cyclical activity in the economy.
Right.
So we've got to look. Hey, it's cyclical. Where's the cycle going? And be prepared for that cycle.
And I'm going to restate this thing, that this doesn't necessarily mean that there is going to be a recession, but cleaning up your financials now as part of the things to be prepared, if things go even better, or if they don't go badly, you are going to be in an enhanced position to take advantage of the growth. If they do go badly, you're going to be in a better position to protect yourself so that you will not face some of the more severe consequences, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've actually had to recommend for companies to file bankruptcy. And one of the reasons is, I mean, you got all the different things, but their financials weren't clean. They don't know where they were, and then all
Yeah,
of a sudden, boom, it hits you in the face. If your financials aren't clean and up to date and actually accurate, I've watched multiple companies have major issues and go down a path because they weren't cleaned up. So make sure your accountant, your bookkeeper, and yourself are up to speed on your financials.
got it. Section one that you mentioned here, this I thought was an interesting one. Stash some cash. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and have you visible to talk about this. So what are you talking about here when and again, good times or bad times, it doesn't really matter. So what's the purpose of stashing cash?
Well, it's being prepared. It's for something happens. I mean, my suggestion is having 3 months run rate in a bank account. Now, that doesn't mean it's just sitting there. You can have it invested, but you have access to it. Okay. Put some money away when you're driving towards this. It's like, hey, if I can have some cash, because it's not a matter of if something's going to happen. It's a matter of when something is going to
When
happen.
something's going to happen, right?
You know, it's not. Hey, are we going to have a recession? Guess what? Yes. The question is when. Are we going to have a booming economy? Yes. The question is when. It's cyclical, so this is going to happen. It's just
There's another side of this too, I think, of having that in place, because personal things can happen that will cause you to have to divert your attention from the business. And if you don't have some cushion there to continue to have the business operate, even if it's part-time for you, you're going to struggle. Yes?
Well, and this is why you talk to your financial advisors and you talk to your insurance, and that there's a team that surrounds the business, or that you need to make sure you're doing your contingency plans that we're going to talk about here in a minute.
Right.
And things. But yes, have some cash stash, and I think the next one is get credit now. So they kind of go together. Um, get credit during the good times. Get credit when you don't need it, because when you need it, you can't get it. It's that is just a fact. Victoria can probably comment on that also. Get
Right.
cash when the times are, or get credit when the times are good, because
Yes.
trying to get credit when the times are bad, you're not going to get it.
Right. That's a really good point. Pardon me. There's some noise in my background here. I'm going to try to just turn off.
Victoria, you want to comment?
Yeah, so I do have a comment with this clean up your financial. At the beginning, I was a little bit confused as what you meant. As I was listening in, and I realized that you actually means to keep your financial record up to date and know where you are and what's your, profit or, burn rate
Profit.
in that aspect. So
Yep.
I think it would be a little bit more clear in that sense, rather than just say clean up your financial. It's a
Yeah,
bit
yeah,
too general, I think.
yeah. What when we start talking about financials, we're talking about your profit and loss, your balance sheet, and your cash flow projections. So
Right.
absolutely, that's part of your regular monthly, minimum monthly reviews of your financials. And I think we did a workshop on that one a couple of weeks ago. So that when we talk financials, it is your profit and loss statements trailing 12 months, so that you can analyze them, your balance sheet trailing 12 months, and your cash flow for the next 12 to 14 months.
Great. Thank you
Here's
for
another
clarification.
another component of that, and we've talked about this before in conjunction with one of BrainSHARE's colleagues, Sean Flynn, who is involved with merger and acquisition side of things. And that is, a lot of business owners, small and medium-sized business owners, will not necessarily include everything in their record keeping. They're not showing all the expenses, or they're not showing all the income here and there, because they think, well, I don't need to right now, or whatever. But if you get into a situation like either a super up economy and you need to take advantage of something, or a super down economy and you need to find some protection area, if your records are not accurate and honest, you're going to be in more of a challenge. So this concept of keep your finances in order is making sure you have them, but making sure they are complete as well. Is that correct, Joe?
Absolutely. So your revenue numbers, your cost numbers. A lot of smaller businesses kind of hide some costs. I'm not your accountant. I'm not. I don't pretend to be on TV. But you've got to know your numbers and be able to utilize that to get credit now, if you can, before there's a recession. Because when the recession comes, I don't care how good your books are. It's always much harder in that crunch time.
Yeah.
So let's go on to the next one, Dave.
Let's do
Get
that.
credit now. Clean up your financials.
Do a scenario analysis. So what do
So,
you mean by doing that, Joe?
and thank you very much. So, scenario analysis is okay. If this happens, what do we know? Scenario one, we have a recession. Scenario two, we don't have a recession. Scenario three, and I'm going to make stuff up because it's your business. You got to run the. What happens if we had an earthquake? What would happen to your business?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like ERP, emergency. What is it? Emergency preparation for your
Yeah,
business.
emergency preparedness. Right. Right.
Yeah, we did that during Y2K. I mean, everybody was doing it during Y2K, right? Oh, the world. So, looking at those scenarios, and some of them, low probability. So you might want to put just a little bit of brain share in that, but a higher probability. The economy is going to change. We all know that it's cyclical. If this happens, what are we going to do? And have a plan in place moving forward.
And I think that when you do that, there's a couple of levels, and you don't have to try to get down into super granularity and saying, what if it's on Tuesday that this happens versus on Thursday that this happens, and that kind of silliness. However, there's some macro things, macroeconomic situations, recession, stagflation, increase. And then there's within your industry. If depending upon what your industry is, if you're in the manufacturing industry and you're producing and shipping products overseas, and a lot of your clients are in the Middle East, what is it going to potentially happen to your business? Okay, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So you think about some of the components that might happen. If your supply chain is from products in South America and there's something going on down there, there's like a major something that happens and your supply chain is impacted, what are you going to do? So these are the kind of scenario things that I think you're talking about that you need to take a look at.
Yeah, well, and at even a macro level, hey, AI, we should have put AI in this because depending on your industry, it's going to disrupt the entire industry. I mean, when you talk about videography, you talk about content generation, you talk about marketing, it's completely changing that industry as we speak. So in your business, you need to be looking at that. What are those contingency plans? If this happens, what am I going to do? How am I going to pivot or adjust?
Exactly. And so from scenario analysis, we go into contingency planning. And these two things I think are kind of related, wouldn't you say?
That they are absolutely related. But contingency planning, I look at that more as from an organizational perspective. So what I kind of look at that, I recommend doing contingency plan or contingency planning. If this person leaves, what happens to the company?
Mm-hmm.
If this person leaves, or like you alluded to, has a medical issue or something, what happens within the company? And am I prepared for that?
Mm-hmm.
So what do we do there? And that ties into the financials and ties into some of your insurance aspect of things and your buy and sell agreements and some other things, depending on how sophisticated your company is and where you're at in the business life cycle.
Got it. So just as a quick summary then, because we're about spending the amount of time that we like to take on these little informational components, things will happen, things can happen, and what you should do is be conscious of what's going on in the business environment, economically, socially, politically, what's some of the regulations in your immediate vicinity, etc. What's going to happen January 1st of 2024 when certain new laws hit. Look at these things, be aware of the environment so that you understand how they could impact your business, and then take the necessary and appropriate actions to be prepared to weather that storm. Anything else, Joe?
The ostrich owner does not last very long.
The ostrich owner. You mean the one
If you
with his
got
head
your
in the sand?
if you got your head in the sand, you're not going to last very long. So
Got it.
pull your head out of the sand, look around, see what's going on, and get prepared, put your plans together, contingency planning and scenario analysis.
Very good. All right. Thank you very much. And we'll see y'all next time at the next scuba session.